I Today is very special day as it's our first live English. Uh, it is exciting to be able to share with people of other nationalities with the same passion. Para los que no me entendieron, sí, este es el canal de Deptin 504. Estamos súper emocionados, es un día muy especial, ya que es nuestro primer live en inglés. Tenemos un invitado de honor. Y estamos muy emocionados por eso. And what better that had a postman supernova like Muhammad? Uh, let's call Aaron. Aaron, how are you?
Hello, Maureen. It's nice to be here in the first bilingual transmission that we will be having. I expect that we will have more in the future. Today we have a special guest, as you mentioned. He is Muhammad. As you mentioned, he is a Postman Supernova Auxiliary Ambassador, and he also is DevAx and AWS, right? So he knows a thing or two about what he's going to talk. He will be talking about the content projection using Angular, right?
Yes, yes. My English is very bit rusty, but I will try. Sorry for the noise. My neighbor is under construction. but see, yes, Muhammad is superstar. Called Hi, Mohammed.
Hello, yeah, I tried it from another network, so let's see. Hope so it will work fine now.
Okay, you can share your screen now. The Dev Team Studio is all you.
What can I share with you? The screen share for slides and all?
Yes.
Okay, okay, yeah.
You can
Let
start. You
me
can
share
start.
my screen. Yeah,
We are all ears now.
okay, thank you. Okay, so is my screen shared now?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Dev Team 504, for giving me a platform to sharing the technical Angular concept here. So my name is Mohammad Awais. I am a full stack software engineer working at company Royal Cyber here in Pakistan. So I am working for them as a full stack software engineer. So for today, actually, we are going to present. I'm actually going to present deep dive into content projection in using Angular. So, other than that, as far as the community part is concerned, I'm Pakistan's first AWS DevX mentor and Auth0 ambassador, and Postman Supernova as well. So, as far as the content projection in Angular, as far as the content projection in Angular, it's actually a concept which is provided by Angular to make your reusable and super fast reusable component. So for that content projection, we have actually multiple kind of content projection techniques to involve with and develop the reusable components for using content projection. So today we are going to take a look on these strategies which are provided by Angular. So let's see and going ahead with it. So first of all, the main thing comes up: what is content projection, and why we are using content projection in our Angular applications? Why should we have to use them? Use this concept in our Angular application. So content projection is actually a pattern through which we can add dynamic content in our component. Like let's suppose if we are working on a web application or on a PWA application, and in the Angular and next generation JavaScript framework and libraries, there is a whole new concept of component based and module based concept. So if we are working on a PWA or any web application or mobile application using Angular. So while developing the components, the next thing is actually we should have to do is we our components should have to be more dynamic, more reusable, to avoid the code repeat and code repeated code and all kind of back jerks and code smells. To avoiding these things, actually we should have to create our reusable components. For that, actually content projection comes up. So for example, content projection, you can understand the content projection with the example. Like let's suppose if we are working, if we have a card component that accept content, that content is actually dynamically provided by some other component. So if you can see on a slide, there is a card which is a bootstrap card. So you can see there is an heading and there is a description here. So if we are going to map this component, this card component in the way of content projection, so that component is actually been accepting the content from the dynamic and the other sources of the hog or higher order or container components which are actually been using this component. So from that actually this description content is coming from other components. So let's suppose if the description is ABC, so that's actually been rendered in that content projected component, which will actually accept this single source of truth. So yeah, this is all about the content projection. There are actually some common implementations of content projection. We will go and we will take a look on it. And there are actually there are actually three types of content projection implementation. So one is a single slot content projection, which is a type of content projection in which a component will accept in which a component is accepting the data or the dynamic content from a single source. So that's actually been known as a single slot content projection. There is also another technique which we called is a multi-slot content projection. In this scenario, in this multi-slot content projection, component is actually being responsible to receive the dynamic data or dynamic content from multiple sources, not from a single source. And there's also a third technique which is being designed, which Angular had provided us. That's actually been responsible to build the complex logics kind of stuff in your projected component. So conditional content projection comes up in that type of scenarios. So that component is actually been used in rendering the component, rendering the conditional data, rendering the dynamic content on the basis of conditional things and conditional logic. So in these scenarios, actually, conditional content projection is being used. So if we are taken an example of single slot content projection, so what it tells about and how we are actually going to use them. So inside single slot content projection, we are actually referring and creating a component which is actually been responsible to which is actually been responsible to get the data from other sources, multiple sources. Like if we have just taken this card example on our previous slide, so that's on the right side you can see there's a code snippet. So it can actually tells us what it is about. So this is about the component which is actually using the content projection principle or pattern to receive the dynamic data from other sources or other main components which are actually using that projected component. So if you can see, there is a div of card, and inside that there is a h5. There is a h5 tag, which is actually been taking the data, or title is input decorator, which is a binding concept in Angular. So after then that, you can see ng content tag. So this ng content tag is a thing which is actually been responsible to load the dynamic content from that component, which is actually been using this reusable component. So this is actually kind of single slot content projection. In this single slot content projection, only the areas you are actually being designed, you are being designated to create a ng content area. So for that area, dynamic content will be coming from the main components. So if we are now there is a second type of content projection, which is multiple slot content projection. So in this multiple slot content projection, a component have actually multiple slots. How multiple slots? Like if you can remember on the previous slide, we have taken an example of ng content in a one scenario. So throughout in the component, you have taken a look like there is only one single ng content area. In the multiple slot content projection, there are actually multiple areas of ng content to load. So if you can see, like each slot can let's suppose like there are now 3 or 4 areas of ng content tag. So the data is coming in this, if the data is coming in the lifeline stream, like let's suppose the data is I have created a multi-slot content projection projected component with 3 ng content tags. So if I pass data from if I pass 3 p tag elements from my main component where the projected component used. So from that, if I am passing 3 p tag elements, so they will load line by line. Like for the first content area, it will be loading the first p tag, and the other one is loading second one, and the third one is loading the third p element. But in the multiple slot content projection, each slot actually can specify with a selector of css, which is actually been determining the content into that slot. So you should have to accomplish this task by adding the select attribute of ng content here. So if you can take a look, if you have take a look on that snippet on the right side for the reusable component, so inside that selected content type, so you can see ng content tag with the select attribute, which is which says that with the name of image. So inside that, if you can take a look on your left side, the eloquent javascript third edition, which is a book cover, so that's actually the image on the very first on the card, on the description and content above of that card. So that's actually the main image, which is actually been coming from the other main components dynamically, and that's actually been loaded in the ng content area here. Okay, and if you can see inside your card body, div class equal to card body, inside that there is a h5 tag. As I already told you, the title is actually coming as an input decorator, which is a binding concept in Angular. So after that, you can see ng content. It's actually without any selector to specify the name with the select attribute. So like if the data is coming, like let's suppose now if you take an example on your on the card, which is actually been added as an image on the left side. So data is actually coming in the three forms. The first one is image. So when I pass the image from the main component, so I will specify the name as an attribute, which is image, from my parent component. So if I pass any image as an attribute image, so automatically that dynamic content will be loaded inside the first select image of ng content tag. And the second one, which is actually the title of the book, which is Eloquent JavaScript, so that is actually coming separately in the binding concept, so that's not the concern here. So after that, you can see default content comment, and after that there is an ng content tag. So if I pass description inside my p tag in from the parent component, and I don't want to specify any attribute name, so that's actually been defaultly loaded in that ng content area. So that's actually the main difference between your single slot and multiple slot content projection. Inside the single slot, we have only the ng content tag, which is actually being responsible to load the data, which is because here we have a single source, and the content is only and the content is actually there's actually a single ng content tag, which is being responsible to load that content inside that. And on the multiple slot content projection, we have also the default ng content area, but we have also selected tag a selector area for the ng content, which we are actually been using with the css selector tag specify. We are actually specifying that selector in the form of css and passing the attribute of select inside that ng content. So that's actually been a designated content, which will be coming from parent component in that type of, like, let's suppose I'm passing the image as you can see in the card, so that is only being loaded in that defined attribute name. And however, if the data is not coming with any selector attribute without any attribute, so that will be actually being loaded in at the default content projection side, like ng content. You can see the ng content tag without any attribute, so that will be loaded here. And the third one is conditional content projection. What this is about? Conditional content projection is what? Let's suppose you have a certain conditions, and on that conditions you have to load some content, and that content is coming dynamically from your parent component. So in the conditional content projection, we have to implement the we have to configure that component in a way that it will be accepting the ng template from our parent component to load and to show the content dynamically, and that will be rendering in that area. So using if we are using an ng content tag element, so in these cases that's actually not recommended, because inside the conditional content projection, with an ng template element, you can have your component explicitly render content on your conditional basis, so as many time as you want. So Angular will not actually initialize that component of ng template element until the element is explicitly rendered. So in these conditional content projection, actually ng content tag is not been recommended from the community or by the Angular to use that while implementing the conditional content projection. So what we have to do is ng template. So let's suppose if I have implemented my projected component, reusable component, in a form of ng content, and I'm passing ng if structural directive on that, so that's actually what it will be do. It will not restrict my content, which is actually dynamically coming from parents, or if I'm using ng content, so that will not strictly been stopped until the condition is true. So that will be automatically initialized by my Angular component. That's how Angular lifecycle is working on. So for these kind of scenarios, Angular community and Angular experts always recommend to implement your conditional content projected areas with ng template tag. So with an ng template element, you can have your component explicitly render like content based or on any condition you want, and like if you want to load that condition multiple times or kind of stuff, so that will actually very help, and it will be working as a super fast mechanism. So that's how conditional content projection will work, and it should have to be a better idea to use that. Okay, so for now, actually, sorry, the theoretical part is actually being ended up here. So now it's a time to see the things how they are working, and in the code base how we are going to implement them. Okay, so if you can see here, this is my Angular application. I have been started that. So if I can show you the application here, so you can see the live application here, which is eloquent JavaScript in the form of this scenario, which is actually being loaded inside. Let's suppose I have an products module. Inside that product module, I have these component. I have actually been develop these reusable components in a form of content projection. So the first one is representing the single slot content projection, and the third one is representing the second one is representing the multiple slot content projection. So if we go and take a look in our code base, so you can see if you can see in the code base, so inside that component products is actually a lazy loaded module here, and inside that product module I have a product listing component. Inside that product listing component, I'm using a product card. You can take a look on here, and also the comment is mentioned here as a single slot. So this is actually a kind of concept this is the main place where I have used single slot content projection. So inside this product listing component, this is the main parent component in which I've been using this reusable component, which is a product card. So I'm passing the data, which was the title. I told you it's been using the Angular binding concept using input decorator. So from here I'm passing the title to my child component, and this is the p tag from where I'm passing the dynamic content to my projected component. So this is how it's been working. So if I'm going and taking a look also inside that product listing component, from where I'm using this projected component, reusable component, inside the typescript of that component, inside the typescript file, if I'm going and I'm taking a look on it, so I have created normal objects here. Inside that object I have passed multiple properties, like the first one is title and the second one is description. So now currently we are taking a look on single slot. So this is a single slot object, and it's been consuming the data here, single slot dot title. So this title is going as an input decorator to the product card component, because product card is reusable child component for me. And other than that, this p tag, inside this p tag I'm passing this dynamic content to my single slot component. So that's actually the description, which is passing which will be going to pass as a dynamic content for a single slot. If I'm now going to that reusable component where I have been applied the content projection, so you can take a look. This is the single slot content projection. Inside this single slot content projection, you can see there is a card, and inside that card there is a h5. H5 tag is being using title object. So if I'm going to the typescript of my reusable component, so you can see there is a binding concept which is input decorator. So I have been receiving the title is a input decorator from my parent component of listing. So I'm accessing that decorator with the name of title here, and that's actually a title variable I have declared. I'm using the title here as in the form of h5 tag, which is some kind of different concept in parent to child kind of relationships. So if I can see, there is ng content on line number 4, which is actually been designated, and it's been responsible to receive the dynamic data from my parent components. So if you can see, there isn't any kind of variable inside my child component. So there is only a simple six-liner HTML code, which is actually being designated to take your dynamic component, and it will be loading here just inside that ng content area. So you don't have to worry about what content is coming from your parent component. So it's totally been like you have to implement that, and like from your parent component you can send a bunch of data or any kind of data you want in your child component. That will be your content project, and that will be a super fast and rendering these kind of stuff in a very easy way. You don't have to you don't have to worry about the multiple conditions and all kind of stuff. You only have to send your pre-cooked data to your child component, and that will be rendering those dynamic areas inside that component. So you can if you have a single slot content projection, and let's suppose you want to send image as a content from your first component, and also you are let's suppose you have a single slot content projected reusable component, and you are using it in three kind of your parent components. So from first component, if you want to load the dynamic data in a form of image, so you can pass that image to that reusable component, so image will be rendered there. And on the second parent component, if you are using same reusable component and you want to load some description or some kind of textual data, so you only have to send that textual data inside that reusable component, so you can see like it will be automatically loaded. So for these kind of scenarios, there is actually a lot of repeated code will be neglected, and your code base is like super fast and super healthy to work on. Like it's super clean. So for these kind of scenarios, you if you have taken a look on this from starting from line number 1 to line number 6, this is on the line number 4. This is the area from you are actually this component, this child component, the usable child component will receive the dynamic data, and that will be loaded here. So from these scenarios, if I can see in my product listing component from line number 8, I am passing that p element to my reusable component. So that is actually being loaded on here, and that is actually being rendered with the help of my child component on line number 4. So that's the pretty fast and good example of single slot content projection here. So now if you can take a if you can take an example of multi-slot content projection. So if I can go to my parent component, so from line number 13 to line number 20, this is the example of multi-slot content projection. So let's take a look on it and how it will be going to work and how it's been working in terms of implementation. If you can take a look on this reusable component, which is a product card, which I was using inside the single slot content projection as well. So for now we are using this as a multiple slot content projection. So this is the same kind of concept title. So I'm passing this title as an input decorator. So you can see I already mentioned you this input decorator is mentioned in my child component. So title is going as a input decorator. So whatever the title will be, it will be loading up here. So also in my in my parent component, you can see there is an simple object of multiple slot name with a kind of any. So inside that multiple slot, I have an image, I have a title, I have also a description, and I have also delivered to property inside my object. So these kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, these kind of three object properties here declared for the multiple slot object. So I'm going to take the data inside my parent component, and I will pass that data to my reusable component to load that dynamic content inside my multiple content projection. So let's have a look on it. So inside that product card, there is a div you can see. That div is actually being responsible to send that div is actually being going as a form of image to my child component. And line number 18, you can see there's a p tag. So I'm passing the description in the form of p tag. So if you can see on line number 15, there's a div which is being using an attribute of image. So this is how I'm now sending two type of contents from here. One is one is in the div, which is actually been using the image attribute here, and the second one is the default one, which is not using any selector here or any attribute inside the p tag. So this is how I'm sending the data from my parent component to reusable component. So we will now go in in our child reusable component, and we will see how this image attribute is going to work on that, how it's been implemented in our child reusable component. So if we can go inside our if we can go inside our if we can go inside our parent component, if you can go in our child component for that product card, so you can take a look on it inside that HTML. So this is the from line number 8 to line number 17. This is the example of multiple slot content projection. So you can see I have added a comment here, selected content type. So this kind of selected content type is being responsible to select the data in the form of like image. If any data is coming as an attribute of image, so that will be loaded on line number 10. So this is the dynamic content area for the selected kind of stuff. Like, let's suppose if the image, or if the kind of if there's a kind of title, or if there is a kind of carousel or any kind of data which is coming from my parent component, which on the main tag, if I will apply an attribute image, so that will be loaded inside this ng content area, which is on line number 10. So this is how, if we now go inside our parent component, and we can take a look on it, that from line number 15 to line number 17, I'm passing the image in the form of div tag, with the help of div tag, and I'm using image attribute here. So that image area will be loaded inside that line number 10 ng content area, because this is designated for any attribute which is coming with a selected name, like image is defined here. So if I'm defining description or proper description or any kind of attribute name here, so I should have to pass from my parent component. So for that purposes, actually that selected data will be loaded inside that selected multiple content projection area. So now if you can see it, if you can see on line number 15, so there is an edgy content area which is for default purposes. So that's actually been responsible for loading any kind of stuff coming from parent component which is not been using any attribute or any selected areas. So if you can go in our parent component, and we will take a look on it. So from on line number 18, if you can see, I'm passing a p tag. Inside that p tag, I'm sending some description to my reusable component. So if we can now go in our child component, so that is being loaded on line number 15, because there is not any attribute or any any select attribute is used on it. So that's for the default content purposes. So this is how all about the content projection is working in Angular. So inside the Angular applications, the main purpose is to the main purpose is to create your reusable components, which will be conditional. If like, there are multiple scenarios if you are working on the Angular small applications, or Angular ERPs, or Angular smarter applications, or automation kind of applications. So reusability is the main concern of Angular. So if you are working on an Angular application, there are multiple kind of concept. Like I have also taken, I've also I will also declare, I will also pre-made, or I will also release the video or kind of concept you can find on my GitHub repository as well. So there are multiple concepts if you are developing the reusable components, either in the form of input and output decorators, or either in the form of third-party services defined in your Angular application. So you are being using RxJS to load and share the multiple kind of data inside your components and all kind of stuff. So content projection is also an important strategy which is being shared by, which has been designed by Angular. So this is actually this content projection is all about to develop your reusable and flexible components. So inside this content projection, you can make your component very super fast because there is a conditional data. You can also make the reusable component with the structural directives provided by Angular by loading the content on the conditional basis of ng if and like ng switch and all kind of structural directives as well. But content projection is the content projection is more simple in these kind of scenarios to load the dynamic data. Like you don't have to worry about like any condition which is actually been working on it, or any condition you have to show this kind of area, and you have to hide this kind of area. So for these stuffs, the code is the code smell still exists in your application. So avoiding the code smells in your Angular application, content projection is a good way to develop your reusable and flexible component. So inside, if you can take a look, if you want to work on hands-on, if you want to hands-on the things for the content projection on the Angular. So you can go on angular.io/guide/content/dash product projection. So there is actually a documentation guide here. They have been shared the amazing example of Zippy Basic toggler, all kind of reusable component here to understand these kind of scenarios to develop your reusable components. So this is how content projection is going to work inside your Angular application. So I will also there is a GitHub repository. I will share the link here inside. If you can go on my GitHub, which is Mohammed Awais Sheikh. So inside that, you can find the repository with Angular concepts here. So inside that Angular concepts, you can find the products module, inside which the content projection strategy is defined in a good way. So this is all about the content projection in Angular. And if you guys have any questions, so you can free to ask me now.
Hello, Mohammed. Very nice talk. Uh, it was very well explained. I have a
Mm,
question for you. Why did you
sure.
use the div tag on the multi-content, the multi-chat one? I'm not sure why you use the div instead of using directly the image one. That's my
For the
question.
Okay, so for that kind of stuff, actually, that select tag which I have already been defined in that. So if we are talking about multiple slot content projection, so you can see you can see there's an ng content with select attribute. So that select attribute is for loading the dynamic content with any specific names of areas. So now let's suppose I want to show a calendar in that content area. So I have to use any kind of name in the place of image, where if you can see the select, if you can see, let me show you in the code base so you can have a good idea. So if you can see on line number 15, there is an image name mentioned here in the dev, in the div tag. So this is responsible for sending the image and loading that image in the dynamic area to my reusable component here. So this is all about, now the question arises, why I am using this image attribute. So the answer is I'm image name attribute because it's mentioned in my reusable component. So any area which is coming with the name of image, so that will be loaded here in the content area dynamically. So that's all about the multi-slot content projection working. That's actually work with the select attribute. So if you define any name here, like I'm defining the name ASDF, so I should have to pass that name ASDF from my parent component as well. So this is kind of identification from that's how actually the multi-slot content projection identifies the areas, like from where the data is coming, and on which side we have to render the data. So
Okay, that's clear. But why not use the selector tag on the image tag directly instead of using it on the div one? I'm just asking to
I
see if it's a matter of of the ng content working, or if there is a specific reason why you use the div one.
The div one, this one is my parent component, product listing. So product listing is using my card. If you can see on line number 14, there is a tag app product card. So that product card is this separate component, which is a card. So
Right.
if I can show you show you on the browser. So if you can take a look on it, let me refresh it. No, it's so let me go in my slides here. So
I
yeah,
believe you didn't save the product card one.
Yeah. If you can see on this slide number inside that single slot, if you see on the left side, so there is a card. This is the same card which is on the multiple slot content projection here as well. So the thing is why this multiple slot content projection is loading the image, because that image is actually coming. Image is actually coming in my reusable component with the select attribute of image name, which is defined in my reusable component. So this is kind of stuff inside that multiple slot and content projection. So inside that multiple slot, we also send some data from our parent component with a specific identifier, either with the name or either with the class, so that actually that data will be designated on that specified place in the code, or that is actually being using our reusable component.
Okay.
Thank, thank you very much, Mohammed. And the knowledge that you share with us is very interesting. The doors the depth thing will always be open to passion about technology like you. Uh, I don't ask all my question. I I am clear. All clear.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it was very clear. Maybe in the future you can have a talk about AWS or something
Yeah,
like that.
sure, sure. Yeah, sure. I'm up for that.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, let's wait if someone has a question for us.
Yes, sure.
Well, I think that was very clear. Then it was a pleasure to have you here, Muhammad. And as we mentioned, it will be a pleasure to have you another time here with another talk that you wish to share with us. You know,
Yeah,
as
sure.
Marine said, our doors are open for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything?
Thank you so much for you guys.
Okay. So we will just be mentioning the next talk that we will have. Okay.
Bueno,
Sure, sure.
para yes. Para la próxima semana, vamos en español, lo siento. Para la próxima semana tenemos a Astor Ayestas. Ay, lo quitó, lo siento. Con una charla de aplicación de full stack de React con Next.js y Prisma or RM para el martes el martes 7 a las 7 de la noche. Están todos invitados. Y el lunes 13 subiendo imágenes a Firebase Storage desde Netcore con Cristian. Hoy también tenemos un día agitado porque tenemos, yo voy a estar con la comunidad de Google de la Universidad BS. Y Cristian también tiene otra de Netcore con los... ¿A qué hora? No recuerdo la hora del de Cristian. No sé si lo sabe usted. Ahí se los compartimos en las redes.
4:30.
Ah,
4:30 p.m.
Macao Tech. Sí, con Macao. Y navegación con React Native el jueves 16 de septiembre. También invitados a la primera charla de la comunidad de Cloud Native en Honduras el 11 de septiembre. También están bien agitadas las comunidades.
Eso es bueno, eso es bueno.
Thank you, Mohammed. You are the best.
That will be all, Mohammed. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and thank you everyone for that was with us today. Let's
Yeah,
see. Let's see you next time. Okay.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for your time. And it's nice to see you here. Thanks for the amazing event. Thank you. We'll see you guys again. Bye bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.